Here are today's top stories. PHIVOLCS records more than 800 aftershocks from the magnitude 7 earthquake that jolted Luzon. President Bongbong Marcos flies to Abra, the tremor's epicenter, to check the situation on the ground. The national government plans to borrow 215 billion pesos from local sources next month, higher than the 200 billion peso program for July. The U.S. Federal Reserve continues its aggressive stance to fight inflation as it raises interest rate for the second straight month. And the government looks to deploy Starlink services to far-flung communities by the first quarter of next year. We begin our broadcast with some updates on the magnitude 7 quake that rocked Luzon yesterday in the city of Vigan. Both water and power operations are now 100% restored, while assessment of affected heritage sites are underway. For more details, we have Laila Pangilinan reporting live from Vigan City in Ilocos Sur. Laila, what do you have for us?
Good morning, Chester. The Vigan City LGU has started assessing the heritage structures of the city this morning. The purpose of this assessment, according to Mayor Bonito Singson, is to check for visible damage and those that are not seen by the naked eye. After the assessment, the LGU will be estimating how much fund will be needed to rebuild and reinforce these structures. Aside from aid coming from the NHCP, the LGU has decided to fund the rehabilitation of the structures to speed up the recovery of the heritage town of Vigan. They will be using a special tool to check inside the walls of old structures. The foundation of these heritage houses and buildings are made of bricks, and because they were built during the Spanish period, there are no steel foundations in them. Earlier, Senator Amy Marcos flew in and met with Vigan Mayor Bonito Singson. Their meeting is still ongoing as of the moment, Chester, and the PHIVOLCS staff has also arrived here in Ilocos Sur. At the plaza, meanwhile, the facade of the Vigan Cathedral was not spared from the quake. Cracks on the cathedral's columns were evident, as well as missing portions of the walls that fell on the ground. The rubbles of the bell tower nearby, which is also damaged by the quake, have not yet been cleared. And speaking of clearing, I'd like you to take a look at this, Chester. If we could pan our camera over here. This is just a portion of an old house here, or a vintage house here in Vigan City, where part of the wall fell down. Actually, this wall was a very high wall, so it fell down until over here at the other side of the road, which is far over here.
Oh, wow.
You can see that bricks on the roof of this car. So this is part of the casualty of the quake that happened here in Chester.
All right, Laila Pangilinan there really showing us the extent of the damage there, at least on her location. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And for those updates, Laila Pangilinan reporting live from Vigan City in Ilocos Sur. Meanwhile, the NDRRMC has clarified that so far there are only 4 casualties from the magnitude 7 earthquake that rocked Luzon yesterday. 2 deaths were recorded in Benguet, 1 in Abra, and another 1 in Mountain Province. The agency clarified that no one died in Cagayan. 131 others have been injured. As of this morning, PHIVOLCS has recorded a total 808 aftershocks. 24 of these were felt. The Tourism Department says it's now coordinating with its regional offices to determine the extent of the damage to tourist spots. Initial reports show that at least 2 churches declared as national cultural treasures in Abra have been hit by the quake. Some ancestral houses along Vigan City's Calle Crisologo were also damaged. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angela said President Bongbong Marcos left for Abra at past 8 this morning to check the situation on the ground and to be briefed on the rescue efforts. Yesterday, the president explained why he decided not to immediately visit quake-hit areas.
I said, let them do their work. Let us wait for them to tell us what is going to be, what the true situation is. And maybe I can schedule a trip, perhaps tomorrow, as soon as possible. Tutulungan kami, siyempre. The immediate, lalo na sa lindol, ang immediate concern is shelter. Kasi nga, kahit na titignan mo yung bahay, mukhang matibay, hindi mo malalaman hanggang na-inspeksyon na mabuti yun. So we cannot allow people to return to their homes yet.
Pausing for a quick break, but coming right up after that. Isolated communities in the country will soon be connected digitally courtesy of Starlink broadband. More of that and other stories when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
Yung
And you're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. The economic team is setting its sights on creating more quality and green jobs, but given the challenging economic environment that we are in, how can government pull this off? To get insights, we have on the show Sergio Ortiz-Luis, President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Sergio, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and always glad to be with you.
Okay, before we get to the topic at hand regarding the labor market, I do believe, of course, you have members over at ECOP and at PCCI up north. How are they doing? Are their operations affected? Or are you looking at least giving them some form of assistance?
Well, we have not yet received any formal call from them. We're just watching media. I guess they're not so bad in a so bad situation, because otherwise they'd be calling us already. But we are preparing already, even with or without call, to assist them.
We do hope as well, of course, that they are all safe there up north, at least for your members there. Now, going back to the topic at hand here on the economic team's 8-point agenda, the goal again is to create more quality and green jobs. How do you think can government pull this off?
Well, we have been cooperating actually with the government, even without that. No? Last year, we already signed with them together with some associations like the BPOs, the contractors, and DOLE and DTI, and to create 1 million jobs to December last year. Unfortunately, because of the raising of the alert system in August, we were delayed, but we were able to do some 680,000 jobs, I think, December. And we continued it this year, and we were able to meet the 1 million jobs last March. And last Labor Day, we again signed an agreement with the same group, with additional people joining us, like the ones in the non-essentials, like restaurants and hotels, to create another 1 million jobs for this year.
How attainable is that now, given the challenging labor market environment that we are in? I mean, going back to figures that we had back in May, and unemployment was at a 3-month high. Are we expecting the high inflationary environment to actually worsen joblessness in the coming months?
Well, it helps, but with or without the inflation, provided there are no policies given regarding COVID, on alerts and restrictions again, and if they are able to solve the transportation, especially here in Metro Manila, it's very attainable. We had more difficulty last year because of the situation. Now that basically COVID is really being endemic, going to endemic already, I think it's very attainable, especially with the Contractors Association. They have been requesting us that they want to pursue some of the build project, but there are some problems about collection regarding the startup of other projects that were supposed to be done. But I guess with the pronouncement that they will pursue the PPPs, the build. I think we will be able to attain our targets.
Okay, apart from construction, of course, which other sectors or industries do you think should the government focus on to create more steady employment and incomes?
Well, there are some little sectors, like for instance in agriculture. We were surprised that we are importing 93% of our salt, and before we could actually have even exported before. Now we're importing from China and Australia, when we should be producing more even to export. No, that at the very least can create. These are not expensive things to do. This is merely policy. 100,000 jobs easily. In the bamboos also. Bamboos, we have not really focused on it. we've even laws which says that 20% of those used in the school should be made of bamboos. Is not being followed. We are also going to plant a lot of bamboos, but it's not considered trees. There are rules on, and yet we should be doing that now. Well, that's on agriculture. I think that we've spoken too much on agriculture already, but there are some other areas where we can focus on, like for instance, mining. Mining, we are beginning to look at responsible mining as something that is doable, and we are hoping that they will pursue the policy. We will forget the fact that mining is something that we are afraid of. I think we should. And the other areas where we can help will be the transportation area. I think we have made a whole lot of mess, especially in Metro Manila on the transportation. Still, a lot of drivers, a lot of are not able to do business. They did all sorts of experiments. At the end of the day, there is traffic in EDSA. There are no vehicles, bus transportation for our employees. And that is the reason why many companies can already recall their workers are not doing so, because it's so difficult to go to the office. It's so expensive for some.
Okay, at least focus on those sectors, agriculture, mining, and transportation to create more jobs. Now, of course, the last time we talked, you did say that it's unlikely for there to be another raise in a minimum wage here, considering that we have already raised wages for the year. But do you think it's high time as well for government to review wage rationalization? Is it possible for them to set a national minimum wage? Is this something that you are also backing?
Well, there is a rationale why there is no national minimum wage, no? And the people fail to see this. One of the biggest reasons why that was a policy before is because of our desire to move enterprises, manufacturing especially, to the rural areas, out of the urban centers. But how do you do that if there is no incentive? For instance, why would they put a plant? Why would they put a company invest in Abra? Abra is the talk of the town now. If I'm going to pay the same salaries.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons. The other thing is the rationale behind the policy that you only have one time, once in a year, to be able to apply for raising of minimum wage. We have no objection if there is compelling reason to adjust, even if we have adjusted recently already. But the reason for that is, there are so many organizations, there are so many representatives in party list of labor sector who would like to know. They can file every week, and there is no stopping there. We have to put some semblance of order in it, and I think it is not the perfect system, our tripartite, but it is nearer to the realities, because in the tripartite, the three parties, the labor, the management, and government are represented, and they look at the data, the economics, and whatever reasons there are. And we do not want that to be politicized. Can you imagine if every congressman who would like to impress their constituency every week will come up with some minimum wage adjustment, no? And how can you have investors, especially foreign ones, to bring investment to the Philippines if that is the case, which is not the case with all our competitors.
Okay. Lastly, before we let you go, I do recall as well a lawmaker proposing for unemployment insurance, just to make sure that we have more targeted subsidies for those who are actually losing their jobs, especially given the economic environment that we are in. Is this something also that the private sector would be supporting?
that is something that we will support. As a matter of fact, we are also supporting the fact that there is no continuity with the insurance when people transfer from one work to another. Even their seniority is cut. Even their separation pay is stopped at some point of time. We would like a insurance or policy where it is continuous. That movement from one company to the other is not going to be a hindrance.
All right, thank you very much again for your time and insights this morning. That was Sergio Ortiz-Luis, President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much also for the opportunity.
The national government is planning to borrow 215 billion pesos from the domestic market in August. Next month's borrowing plan is higher than the 200 billion peso program this July. However, the Treasury says that the government was only able to raise around 194 billion pesos from domestic borrowings this month. The Treasury will hold auctions for T-bills every week, which is projected to raise 75 billion pesos, while auctions for T-bonds are estimated to generate 140 billion pesos. Now, this from the Philippine Star. The private sector has lost around 5.1 billion pesos from expired vaccines. Data from Go Negosyo shows that there are 4.2 million expired COVID-19 vaccines in private sector warehouses so far. The group says the final batch of Moderna vaccines brought by private companies will expire by the end of the month, while the last of the Moderna vaccines already expired yesterday. Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion attributes this to the late decision of the DOH and HTAC to expand second COVID boosters for those 50 years and older and for 18 to 49-year-olds with comorbidities. Concepcion says this shows a lack of urgency on the part of health officials, causing the bulk disposal of hard-earned COVID vaccines. The DICT expects to deploy Starlink broadband services to remote communities in the country by the first quarter of 2023. Information and Communications Technology Secretary Ivan Uy said they are preparing all documentations and requirements so that they will be ready to launch. On Wednesday, the DICT and Starlink parent SpaceX presented the satellite dish and router that will be used to receive signals from space. The Philippines is set to be the first country in Southeast Asia to experience Starlink services. And overseas, the U.S. Federal Reserve has raised rates for the second straight month. The Fed raised its benchmark overnight interest rate by 75 basis points in an effort to cool inflation. Policymakers lifted the target for the federal funds rate to a range of 2.25% to 2.5%. That takes the cumulative June to July increase to 150 basis points, the steepest since the early 80s. The U.S. Central Bank Chief Jerome Powell said another, quote, unusually large hike might be appropriate in September if price pressures have not sufficiently abated. And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us. And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. So let's now check in with Mon Gualvez, who is reporting to us live from Abra, the epicenter of the quake. Mon, how's the situation there this morning? I think you are on mute, Mon. Okay, let's have a quick check
Jes,
first. Okay,
can you hear me
we can
now?
hear you now. Go ahead, Mon.
All right. Aftershocks are now the major concern of residents here in Bangued, Abra following the initial earthquake yesterday morning. Many residents chose to spend the night in Bangued's town plaza. These include senior citizens and even infants. Residents pitched tents or set up spots to rest inside the covered court or by the road, while others chose to stay inside their vehicles. Authorities also clarified that the water level of the Abra River is not rising. Right now, Jes, more than 1,000 individuals are staying in the evacuation center here in Abra. And 5 towns in the province are still isolated because of the landslides that block the main roads. President Bongbong Marcos is also visiting Abra today to inspect the damage brought by yesterday's magnitude 7 quake. Jes?
All right, thank you very much for those updates. Stay safe. That was Mon Gualvez reporting live from Bangued in Abra. All right, let's have a quick check of how the markets are doing. You have Asian stocks extending their rally, albeit a more tempered gains compared to how Wall Street performed. But looking at this chart right here, you'd see Japanese stocks, at least now, earlier in the day, they were in the green. However, reversing those gains, topics down 0.2%. Likewise, the same for Nikkei. You can see as well Korean stocks, however, gaining here close to 0.7%, as well as Aussie stocks gaining close to 0.7%. This again, of course, following the Fed deciding to at least hike rates by 75 basis points the second month of tightening, even signaling that another similar move is not off the table as they continue to battle inflation over at the local bourse. You can see right here the index making some huge gains here at the start of the trading day, up 1.1%, close to 1.2, in fact, now at the 6,300 level at 6,308 to be exact, extending those gains that we saw on Wednesday. Now let's have a quick check here, particularly on Aboitiz Power. You can see the stock here starting the day on a good note, up by 1.9% after it posted strong growth in the second quarter, with consolidated net income up by 79% to 7.1 billion pesos. Core net income likewise also increasing by 59% to 6.1 billion pesos. However, first half net income slightly down 2% to 10 billion pesos. The power players says they are confident that they will maintain high plant availability as economic activity increases. Again, you have Aboitiz Power here starting the day in the green. Lastly, let's have a quick check here on PXP Energy, saying that it will continue talks with government to continue exploration activities in service contracts 75 and 72 in the West Philippine Sea. That also includes exploration work in SC40 and 74. Again, you have, however, PXP Energy here starting the day flat at 5 pesos and 70 centavos a piece. And that wraps up our look at the trading day this Thursday. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Keep it here on One News, all sides, all the time.